years to come, what the hell can we introduce into DIT that hasn't been here before? And what Aina said to me was, well, over in America we have BIM. And I said, what's BIM? And he told me that, well, what it is, building information modeling systems. You know, we don't do measurement and takeoffs or anything like that. We actually have 3D models that actually put all this thing together, and the full program information is attached to it, and the full costings are attached to it. So I said, flipping hell, how do I learn about this? So I started going on net, and I said, right, I'll see if there's any course. So I got onto the LinkedIn. People came on the LinkedIn and said, look, there's a course in BIM, there's one available. And I said, right, I wonder whether Tom would actually pay my airfare to wherever it was going to be, France or Italy or America, until I realised it was in Ireland. And I didn't realise, but Matthew Edwards here basically, you're down in whereabouts, Kildare, is it?
Kilkenny.
Kilkenny, yeah. Sorry, I do apologise.
Yeah, this is a cat, so. Yeah.
So it's down in Kilkenny was where the actual courses were being held, and I found it great, so I invited Matthew here. It was the last year, the year before, to talk to some of our students, and certainly the presentation that Matthew showed of where BIM was going at that particular stage was quite enlightening, certainly by the jaws dropping from the students that have actually attended, as well as some of the lecturers downstairs in the services department. So since then, Matthew has been extremely busy. He's also the Irish representative for Planning Planet, which is an international organisation with about 45,000 members, who are basically have their own website and are setting up courses at the moment as regards planning. I'm sure Matthew will talk about that later on as well. And so without further ado, Matthew, if you could take it away, introduce us, like us on BIM. Thank you.
Has anybody ever heard of building information modelling before? Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Hands up who's QS, hands up QSs. Oh yeah. Is that aspirations for PQS or for contractor QS? Good job. Oh yeah. Basically, right, BIM itself is a process. Okay? There's a lot of software out there like AutoCAD. The architects are designing AutoCAD, yeah? AutoCAD, Revit. Builders use a thing called Synpro, but they build it. Okay? And the way I like to come across about BIM, keep it simple. It's back down to time, cost and quality and project management. Okay? So when you start on the basis of project management, it's always time, cost and quality. Alright? And that's everything with project management. And BIM is a process itself. Okay? What we do in BIM is that there's no such thing as a BIM model. Okay? Because what we're doing is that architects are creating now 3D models. Alright? And these are intelligent files, whereas years ago architects would use a 2D drawing, and before that they had pen and paper, and before that they had the quill. So what's happened now is that this is a digital model now they can create, and they can put lots of information in there. They can put in their quantity of concrete, say for example. They can also put in their information as regards to specifications. They can put in their rebar as well, strength of rebar, types of rebar, all that sort of stuff. So the architects are, and the engineers, structural and mechanical engineering engineers, also putting this information there as well. Now, when it comes to cost, okay, cost is what we call the fifth dimension of BIM. Okay, so with cost happens at all stages of the project life cycle. Right, it happens at the conception stage, and it also happens at the end of demolition as well. So if you take a project, if you take this building here, it's going to get smashed down like next year, whenever, But when it was built, it was costed to be built, and once it was handed over, it also has to be maintained as an asset. Okay, and it's the same thing with a 3D model as well. A 3D model has to have properties in there where it can be built and it can also be maintained as well. Exactly the same. So in the future, what's going to happen is that 3D models will dictate to the building owner how long a building will last for. So he can get his maximum return on the material that he's using. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Anybody shaking their head? No. Okay. So, right. So with BIM, okay, BIM is a process going from year zero, right, of the design process, concept stage to demolition, right. And if anybody tells you different, don't listen to them, right. And that's BIM. And to be honest, that's also what Ove calls as well. Before he died in 1970, was total architecture. All right, and that's his vision. His vision was always total architecture. And you'll find Arabs, for example, now in the UK, and what they do, they have mechanical engineers sat by architects and offices. They don't have little silos of all the architects in one corner and all the M&E engineers in another corner. They're all together. They're all on the same, wavelength, like, you know, because it's called total architecture. So BIM has been going around for a very long time as well. Now, I'm going to talk today about 5D. All right, and I've got these guys here called the European Council of Construction Economists. All right, I never heard them before until Richard came to me and he says, "Can you do a talk to these lads?" And I thought, well, to be honest, like, you know, I mean, you know, I've got to think about what sort of angle you can come at with the fifth dimensional, the cost element. And at the moment in this country, and also in my country as well, because I'm a blowy, I'm from Herefordshire in England, the problem is that contracts are completely incorrect. All right? The GCCC form of contract allows for no collaboration whatsoever, which you need in BIM. All right? So all the lads have been government in Leinster House and in the House of Parliament as well. They haven't got a clue. All right? So that's all going to change for starters, right? The second thing then as well is bill of quantities as well. When you get a bill of quantities through, right? When you do a tender, an architect normally would just do a concrete slab, plonk, that's it. And it could be about 3,000 cube for a pour, all right? And then a bill of quantities, it'll be 3,000 cube as well, all right? So, you know, there's a lot of issues there on the bill of quantities stage as well. And this is a fundamental issue I have talking to contractors, talking to designers. It's called constructability, all right? So constructability is a big issue as well. So today I want to start, talking to you lads as well. I want you to start talking, you know, asking me questions and doing a bit of bang snuff, like, you know, because I don't know everything, you know. So I might stand here with a suit on with what I do, like, but at the end of the day, it's all about people talking, like, you know, because at the moment, well, architects, engineers, and contractors are in silos. You see, you've got one guy here in a silo, and he's doing his little bit of architecture, and you've got another guy in engineering, he's doing his engineering as well. And that's gonna basically spend the next 5-10 years gonna vanish. I think that's done. And this is where you have to be. Your mindset has to be BIM. Another one as well is policy and legislation. I'm not too sure about the Irish government, but I say they'll be into it pretty soon. But over in America, the federal government has said, in pretty much all the states now, I think Wisconsin last year and New York said that all projects have to be BIM orientated, okay, and delivered using BIM methodologies. The UK Cabinet, there's a guy over there called Paul Morrell. He's called a construction czar, right, like the old Russian czars, without horse though. And he basically said that all capital projects in the UK within the next 5 years have to be BIM. What do you think about that? Okay. So, from an educational perspective, from a construction industry perspective, we all have to change. Because if you don't change, you can forget it. That's a threat. All right. So what I want to cover today, right, is the fifth dimension, right, which is NASA's building information modeling process and current issues of the European methods of measurement, right. Now, this talk in Nice,
It's in Nice, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the talk in Nice, I'll show it now, I'll start getting some slides. The talk in Nice is going to be with different people, different backgrounds. I mean, we're going to have in there the RICS, they're in there, they haven't got a clue, you know, from what I understand. REBA, they're doing all their designs. ICE, they're pretty much, Institute of Engineers, they're pretty much the most independent of the whole lot at the moment. In actual fact, 9th of October in Westminster, we're having a stall at the ICE BIM event, and that event is when the UK government's going to say, right, this is our new strategy on BIM, and it's for the next 5 years, you know. As soon as that rings over there, it's going to ring down over here as well, I imagine, like, you know. So, charging architect technologists, great bunch of guys. I actually think that they're way ahead. CIBC, they're very good as well. Okay, but they've all got different views on BIM. Okay, so these guys here made up the UK Construction Project Information Committee, and they say building information modelling is digital representation of physical and functional characteristics of a facility, creating a shared knowledge resource for information about it forming a reliable basis for decisions during its life cycle, from earliest conception to demolition. That's all I agree with that, like, you know? That's a very good point. In America, these guys here, right, just as contractors, they're saying an object-oriented building development tool that utilises 5D modelling concepts, information technology and software interoperability to design, construct and operate a building project as well as communicate details. So there's a bit of difference, I think, you know, where they're all coming from. That's a contractor body, and that's all your institutions, like, you know. Okay. So yeah, so all these different institutions as well have got a different thoughts on BIM. Right. Now, what can BIM be used for? Well, basically, practically anything in 3D. Okay, so if you imagine that speaker there, imagine that was done in 3D, design an office somewhere. All right, this building, the next one which comes here, most will be designed in 3D. Okay, so you can look at 3D architectural design, 3D civil and structural design, and 3D M&E design. Talk to Maliki Matthews. He'll bore you to death about the different types of packages there, like, you can design at those stages. Okay. Now you can do operation and maintenance design as well, commissioning, and monitoring preventive maintenance as well in 3D. But to be honest, though, if you want to do O&M commissioning, you have to put time against it as well. All right, so that's called 4D. Projects, construction projects include commercial projects, hotels, offices, supermarkets, residential, educational, government and local authority, and major capital construction projects. The clients at the moment, the ones who are looking for return on investment, and they see BIM as the big one, I would say, would be the supermarkets. Okay, residential, not too sure just yet. I think when there's a big housing boom in the UK, for example, back over here again, that'll become BIM orientated. And obviously, educational projects, yes, I believe so. But government, though, government projects, governments are going to be pushing this, especially the major capital ones as well. Like, you know? So we'll have a look at that a bit later on as well. So I'll show you a few different demonstrations. Civil engineering projects, you can use BIM on tunnels and bridges, basements, renewable energy schemes, wind farms, power stations, water treatment, linear projects like rails and motorways, capital civil engineering, yeah, RPA and arch rail projects as well. But the thing is, though, is that 3D is when it gets created, obviously, and these certain projects here have a lifetime, okay? And that lifetime then, you know, they're going to, I mean, for example, the tunnel, I don't know how long it lasts for, but it depends on what it's made of, like, you know? So with BIM, that's the same thing as well, like, you know? So the life cycle management is very important. So how many dimensions are there in building information model? Well, you've got 3D, right? 3D BIM, which is 3D design. So that's all the architects and the engineers on the top floor. 4D, which is what we call the 3D objects linked back to a program and a schedule. Okay? And then we have 5D, which is your 3D model, okay, your 3D model, your program, and also your men, machinery, materials, okay, and they're all input into the program, okay. Not only the program, but also the cost of the building as well. Like, you know? So, you know, 5Ds are very important. But in actual fact, I don't mind using 4D. It doesn't have the impact as what 5D does, because with 5D you bring the cost in there and you also build the thing up. 6D sustainability, basically the robustness of 3D objects. Say for example this table here, it's a bit ragged, but if you've got one made of metal, it's going to last longer than plastic. So that's the robustness of the 3D object. Same with the block of wall. You know, if you have a block of wall, different types of blocks in there. You know, I remember when I was a block layer, I had 9-inch blocks building dish shafts and stuff. And they're fairly heavy like that too. It lasted a lot longer than those things. You know? So the robustness of 3D objects, like, you know? 7D, facilities and asset management. Okay, so as I was saying before, once the building is built, then we go into I call it 7D mode. right? That's when we've got to start looking after the building. But you know, back to the block work thing again. We only know how long. We have to know how long that block's going to last.